Aloha, everybody. Welcome to today's March 28th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. My name is Brian Undaya. I'm the chair of the board. I'd like to go over some virtual meeting regulations required by law. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet quorum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at the location during. The public is allowed to attend the Board of Water Supply Board meeting here at the BWS Public Service Building located at 630 South Beretania Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96843. You may also attend via interactive conference technology. Masks are optional. Let's take a moment to take a roll call of the board members. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Vice Chair Kapua-Sprout.
I am appearing from my home office and I'm alone with the door closed.
Thank you. Board Member Max Sword.
Yeah, present.
Board Member Jonathan Mushiro.
Present.
Chair Brian Undaya.
President. All right, we do have a couple of members that we're waiting for, but we do have quorum. So we're going to go ahead and proceed. Chair recognizes the presence of board member Nale, who
Apologies for being voted, Mr. Chair.
probably. Board members who are calling in or on video conference, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you should have a question, comment, or wish to enter a motion or second a motion on an action item, make a comment, or want to applaud something or someone, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself before continuing to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the chat to send a direct message to our support. Their names are listed in a message to all participants. To open the chat window, please click or tap on the text bubble icon toolbar. Also in the room with us today is our manager, Ernest Lau, Deputy Manager Erwin Kawata, Board Secretary Joy Cruz Ochoa,
Here.
Manager Secretary Kimberly Hawaii,
Here.
and Information Specialist Mr. Stephen Nordstrom.
Here.
Joining us by Zoom are Jeff Lau and Jessica Wong, both from the City and County Corporation Council Department, along with Information Specialist Wayne Maria. Testimony was taken via written testimony. We also will accept oral testimony remotely and in person during today's meeting. Pre-registration is encouraged. Testifiers should also consider submitting a written version of their oral testimony. To testify remotely by phone or video using the Zoom video conferencing platform, please submit your requests via email to board@hdws.org or online at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. To testify in person at the Board of Water Supply here at 630 Beretania Street, please pre-register by submitting your request. We also have, I believe, someone downstairs who can also register you, check in with building security, and then with testimony staff located in the lobby. Testifiers will be escorted to and from the boardroom, and on-site registration will be available for walk-in requests. As a friendly reminder today, we do have board members who are on a tight schedule, who need to leave at a certain time. I will remind any testifier again, but here at the beginning, I will also state that testifiers shall have 2 minutes to state their position. A timekeeper will alert you when you have 1 minute and then 30 seconds left to wrap up your comments. Please respect the 2-minute time limit. so that we can take the next testifier and that's so we can get through our agenda before members have to take off. Meeting materials or the board packet under HRS section 92-7.5 are accessible on our website at www.boardofwatersupply.com/board-meetings. You are also welcome to view the meeting via live streaming on our website at www.boardofwatersupply.com/live. The video player will appear on screen. You may have to click the arrow on video to start it. You may also have to unmute the audio, as muted audio tends to be the default setting. Before I begin today's regular meeting, I'd like to state that this board is dedicated to providing safe, dependable, and affordable supply of water now and into the future. We have 2 items on our agenda requiring board action. First item requiring board action is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on February 27, 2023. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 27, 2023?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments, additions, amendments? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular meeting held on February 27, 2023, say aye.
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 Any who oppose, please say nay. Okay, it's unanimously approved. The minutes of the regular meeting held on February 27, 2023. All right, we're gonna move on to our next item requiring board action today. This is to authorize a public hearing to consider a proposed amendment to the schedule of rates and charges for the furnishing of water and water service for fiscal years 2019, 2023, which would be effective September 10th, 2018 through June 30th, 2023, for the Board of Water Supply to remain in effect until superseded. Chair recognizes Ms. Raylin Nakabayashi.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So we are recommending that the board authorize a public hearing on Monday, April 24th at 2 p.m. or shortly thereafter. So essentially, the charges, we're asking the public hearing to be held to extend the charges that became effective on July 1st, 2022 until superseded. Included in the board letter are all of the charges that will be extended and the various amounts. If you could keep scrolling, please, Stephen. That's our customer charge, quantity charge, and then the next page goes over, continues on with quantity charges. This includes the fire meter standby charge. And this also includes extensions of waivers that became effective with the last rate schedule. The waiver for water systems facility charges for qualified, affordable, and homeless dwelling units. And also the waiver for, scroll up a little bit. The waiver of meter charges for residential fire sprinkler retrofits. Also, the last rate schedule included 2 adjustment features, the power cost adjustment and the environmental regulations compliance fee cost adjustment, both of which will also be extended until superseded. And if you scroll to the attachment, Stephen, this is just a draft of the notice of public hearing. We'll put it into final form, but it just indicates to the public that the public hearing will be held on April 24th, 2 p.m. This location provides the means for which the public to provide their testimony or their feedback on these matters. You could scroll down. So that's essentially the first half of the public hearing notice. And then this is the rest that will go in the paper, which are the different charges and rates that will be extended. All are noted as having become effective on July 1st, 2022, and will remain in effect, I guess, until superseded. There are any questions though, I'd be happy to answer.
So members, basically, what we're doing is we're gonna extend the current rates that we have today until further notice. We are going into a rate study in a couple of months. Based on that rate study, we will be resetting rates, I would presume. It is one of our primary functions under the charter. But we're gonna keep everything in a status quo in abeyance up until that point. Otherwise, it is set to expire at the end.
On June 30th of 2023.
Members, any questions?
So, Mr. Chair, we would need the, we would need this announcement to go out and to hold this just to be able to carry over past 2023.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Yes. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Actually, let me just double check. Ms. Kauai, do we have in-person testimony on this item?
No, there's no in-person.
Thank you. Mr. Maria, do we have any remote testimony on this item?
No, Chair, we do not have any testimony for this item waiting online.
Thank you. And Madam Secretary, did we receive any written testimony on this item?
No, Chair, no written testimony.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, final call for any discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of authorizing a public hearing to extend our current rates and, for the time being until superseded, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, unanimous decision here. It is hereby authorized that we're going to have a public hearing to consider extension of the current rates to 2 p.m. on Monday, April 24th, 2023.
I just have a
Chair, we need a motion.
oh, huh?
We need a
Oh, we
motion.
don't have a motion on the floor?
No. So moved.
Do we have any? I believe member Sword has made a motion,
Yes, made a motion or no.
right? Do I hear a second?
Anthony,
Second.
All right, board member Nali, who is, has seconded the motion. Let's take a roll call vote, actually.
Vice Chair Capua-Sproat,
Aye.
Board Member Matt Sword,
Aye.
Board Member Nale Anthony,
Aye.
Board Member Jonathan Kaneshiro,
Aye.
Chair Brian Antaya.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 5 ayes.
All right, thank you. So noted. All right, that brings us to the end of our items requiring board action. We will now move into items for information. Item number 1 for information.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question. Do we always have a drop dead every time a drop dead date every time we do the rates?
So this was done adopted by the board back in 2018. So the way we checked with Corporation Council, and the way that it was worded at the time, it looked like it would end on June 30th of this year.
So it's not, it's not common to have a drop date. A drop
Yeah,
dead date.
and I'll take the responsibility for the wording for that, but it would normally carry over until superseded, like what the board took a vote on to authorize a public hearing.
Okay.
So we're going to be very careful in the next rate schedule, once we finally go through that process and do the community outreach, to word it very clearly to state that until superseded,
Okay.
that the last scheduled increase would continue until superseded.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems funny to do that.
So
Thank you.
basically, this action was, there's no rate increase. We're just going to continue at the rates that went into effect June of last year.
So the next time.
Maybe July 1st.
Okay, so the next time we work on this,
Making sure that the resolution's very
okay,
clear.
there's no drop dead.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next item. This is the update on the Board of Water Supply's response to the potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contamination. Chair recognizes Ms. Joyce Lin.
Before Joyce
Yes.
begins, I'd just like to introduce Joyce Lin, who is a civil engineer with the Board of Water Supply. And she's graciously agreed to work on supporting us in Red Hill crisis situation and to become very familiar with what's going on and what are the challenges that we face. So thank you, Joyce. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, board members. I'm Joyce, like Ernie introduced, and I'll be providing an update on the Board of Water's response on the potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contaminations. So to start off, on March 14, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, proposed national primary drinking water regulations to have enforceable maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs, for 6 PFAS compounds. And I will go into details on them a little bit in the next slide. Tomorrow, EPA is holding an informational webinar at 8 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time on the technical aspects of the proposed PFAS regulation. It's online, and you can register at the link below here. And once you are registered, you will be sent an email with the Zoom link. Once the regulation is posted to the Federal Registry, there will be a public comment period where the public is invited to provide written comments. EPA will be holding a virtual public hearing on May 4th, 2023. Just like the information hearing, you can register online to attend. If you'd like to provide verbal comments during the public hearing, you will need to register by April 28th. Here are the proposed MCLs and MCLGs, which stands for the maximum contaminant level goals. For PFOA and PFOS, they have proposed MCLGs at 0 and proposed MCLs at 4 parts per trillion, or PPT. The remainder 4 PFAS are grouped together as a mixture and have a MCL hazard index of 1. The hazard index is the tool used to evaluate the potential health risks from exposure to chemical mixtures. So here, a hazard index below 1 is safe and in compliance, and a hazard index of 1 or above is not safe. Below here, you can see the formula used to calculate the hazard index. It's basically made up of a sum of fractions. Each fraction compares the level of each PFAS measured in a water sample to the level determined to not cause health effects according to EPA. On the topic of PFAS, the Department of Defense has been and is conducting preliminary assessments and site investigations on 700 military installations across the nation. Of the 700, there are about 26 facilities in the state of Hawaii. As you can see, there's a mix of Air Force, Army, and Navy facilities. Here is a visual representation of the military installations on Oahu that we have gone through or is going through the PFAS investigations. You can see that the facilities are pretty widespread throughout the island, and the map shows where Red Hill facility, the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility, is right here. And around the perimeter of the island is the pass and no pass zone, or well, all the red ones around the perimeter is the pass zone. Anywhere in line without the red is the no pass zone. And as you may know, the island of Oahu has a federally designated sole source aquifer. And here in this map, you can see the designated boundaries of our aquifer in gray. Most recently, the Board of Water Supply was informed by the Hawaii National Guard that their Waiawa Unit Training and Equipment Station underwent site inspection and sampling for PFAS. The facility is located in the Pearl City Industrial Area, which is just south of Waipio and north of Pearl Harbor. On the right here, you can see a map showing the two areas of interest on their facility and their sampling locations and results. Based on their sampling and testing, their soil samples detected a mixture of PFAS below screening levels, but the groundwater sample showed screening levels exceedances. The Board of Water Supply have a few sources near the Hawaii National Guard's Waiawa facility. To the east, we have the Manana Wells, and we have also the Pearl City Shaft. The Navy's Waiawa Shaft is actually just up gradient north of the National Guard's facility. And if you look at the west, we have the Board of Water's Waipio Heights wells. On March 17th, we put out a news release to the public that we detected low levels of PFAS at our Waipio Heights wells. The detected level are at around 2 parts per trillion, which is below the DOH's environmental action level and EPA's proposed MCL. The water samples were collected in February of this year, and we have reported them to the Department of Health in accordance with the Hawaii state law. We will continue to sample, test, and monitor PFAS chemicals in our sources so that we can ensure safe drinking water to all of our customers. Here are some past PFAS incidents at Red Hill. December 7, 2019, approximately 1,500 gallons of concentrated firefighting suppressant was spilled. September 29, 2022, approximately 5,000 gallons of fuel impacted water was released in an underground pump house that was discharged through pipings that previously held AFFF. Also, last year, November 29, 1,300 gallons of AFFF concentrate was spilled. So with all that's been happening, we do have some concerns that PFAS chemicals may make their way into the groundwater. Lastly, just some event and communication updates. The Board of Water Supply attended the National Guard's public meeting on PFAS investigation on February 24th. We are in receipt of their site inspection, draft site inspection report, and we'll be providing some comments shortly. We have regular in-person meetings with the 3 Navy admirals to discuss updates on the defueling and closure of Red Hill, the bulk fuel storage facility. Ernie and Erwin have been meeting with the Department of Health regularly as well to coordinate with Red Hill updates. We are also part of the Red Hill Remediation Roundtable, and we meet quarterly with EPA, Navy, DOH, and USGS on the remediation actions or aspects of the Red Hill facility. Lastly, Ernie sits in the Defueling Information Sharing Forum group. The group just had an update meeting this past Friday here in the boardroom. Ernie can help provide an update for us on this shortly, but this concludes my presentation for today. And I'll be on standby for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. So to follow up on the last item for the information sharing forum, which is focused on defueling. So the Vice Admiral Wade's created this, he's in charge of the Joint Task Force whose sole responsibility is defueling the facility, taking the 104 million gallons out of the Red Hill tanks and getting it safely defueled. So he created this information sharing forum as a way to share information and keep everybody informed, keep the community informed. So we just had a meeting here. I offered our boardroom as one of the venues. The last meeting before that was held at the state legislature before the session started. So we met last week Friday, and just some highlights of that. The AFFF investigation. So this is the investigation the Navy ordered after the November 29th, 2022 spill of 1,300 gallons of AFFF concentrate. That investigative report, along with the video, is still has not been released. And it's presently, I think, from what we heard, It's in the Department of Defense leadership back in Washington, DC. They're still reviewing it and they haven't agreed to release it yet. But when it does get released, we can anticipate that the Navy will come out and they may hold a press conference to share this information publicly with the community. This report has been long waiting. We've been waiting for its arrival for a long time. On the repairs, so the about 253 different repairs was identified to the facility for safety fueling of the 104 million gallons. What we heard last week was out of the 253 jobs or repair jobs, they've completed about 104 of them. So at this time, they think they're still on track for defueling in June, by June of 2024, June of next year. So I mean, that still to me is still could be, if they can shave off months off of that, the more the better. But right now still on track for middle of next year. They are looking at ways to communicate progress on the red defueling efforts with the community. And they're working on developing something called an integrated master schedule. Basically a simple schedule that people can see and it'll give them an idea of where the milestones or key achievements they need to achieve to stay on schedule. They are working also on putting together a dashboard for the community so that you can maybe on your smartphone be able to get access to information that they presently are kind of loading onto a few of their websites, which is not easy to navigate. So they're looking at dashboard. Something that they just recently announced not too long ago was the requirement for to go through the NEPA process or the National Environmental Policy Act process. You know, basically what they're looking at doing here for the not so much the defueling from the tanks to Adit 1, but it's really taking the fuel from the hotel pier where ships would take it and move that fuel elsewhere, that they need to do a NEPA process for that portion of it. The things that occur within the tunnel itself, they're not going to require that be covered under a NEPA process. So they are looking at doing that and looking at the potential environmental effects of defueling and relocation of the fuel. So that just came out not too long ago. Also, the Navy just released in late February something called a tank Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility Tank Closure Plan Supplement #1. So this is out released publicly and on the Navy's website too. Some of the things that are interesting, they're still looking at 4 alternatives. Alternative 1 being closure in place. Alternative 2 is closure in place and preparation for non-fuel reuse. Alternative 3 is closure with filling the tanks. Alternative 4 is remove the steel liner and fill the tanks. So the Navy has come out and maintained their position, which they have from the beginning of the discussion on closure of the Red Hill facility. This is after defueling is completed. So remove the 104 million gallons. Now, what do you do with permanently with the facility? The Navy's always maintained they want closure in place, which is basically leave everything intact and still there, but no fuel in the facility and fuel remnants cleaned out of the tanks and pipes. We've always maintained, from my perspective, we cannot allow the risk of fuel ever coming back into this facility, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years, or even 20 years from now or beyond, that the facility needs to be permanently shut down or closed in a way that will not allow fuel to be brought back in or any other types of chemicals that could endanger our water resources. So I've always favored alternative 4, which is remove the steel liner, the 1/4-inch steel liner in each of the tanks, remove a significant portion of it at least, or if not all of it, and fill the tanks up with some inert material like concrete or gravel or something so that they cannot easily use it. Also, I would suggest remove of the pipeline, 3 miles of 3 different pipes that connect the facility to Pearl Harbor and dismantle the pump room at Pearl Harbor. So it really is very difficult or impossible for them to bring fuel back if changes were to occur someplace in the Pacific. So that this is supplement number 1. They are doing public outreach, I think right now, to solicit public comment on the non-fuel reuse of the facility. So that's kind of my addition to Joyce's excellent report. Thank you, Joyce. Any questions, board members?
Yeah, I have a quick question. With the PF issue
Yes.
and the fuel issue, are there 2 different groups or it's all under one group that's monitoring this whole thing?
Would you like to?
Sure.
In other words, do you have 2 admirals or you just have 1 admiral and then taking care of the whole thing?
Maybe I can.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Joyce. So right now, and that's always been some of the challenges over the years, that there is different military commands or responsibilities. Think of them almost like silos with different admirals in charge.
Right.
So right now, when it comes to this Red Hill situation, there are, as far as we can tell, 3 primary admirals. For the defueling of the fuel tanks, it's the Joint Task Force under Vice Admiral John Wade. For the closure of the facility, permanent closure somehow, it's under Rear Admiral Stephen Barnett, Commander of Navy Region Hawaii. He owns the facility. And then for the remediation of the aquifer and the clean and support for engineering and environmental work, it's under a 3rd Admiral, Rear Admiral Jeff Killian, who is the head of NAVFAC or Naval Facilities Command Pacific. So the responsibilities for this Red Hill situation, from the environment to the actual facility itself and the fuel, it's under 3 different admirals. That's the reason why we try to meet on a regular basis with 3 admirals in the room with us.
Yeah, the reason for my question real quick is that, you know, the Navy and military, they transfer out every so many years. But, you know, this is not, you're not going to be solved within the next 3 years, say for instance. Is there any, not safeguards, but is there any consideration to what happens when one of them gets transferred out or gets promoted or whatever? That will continue. I mean, the process to close down or to rectify all this situation is going to be solved or continue to be solved or continue forward to where it ultimately gets solved.
Board Member Sword, that's been one of the challenges we've been encountering for the last 9 years.
Yeah, no, I understand that from the very beginning.
That they have assignments or to different commands, and it's usually 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, there may be turnover in the 3 admirals that we're currently working with, which seem to be much easier to talk to than prior admirals. So that is going to be one of the challenges, you know, the turnover in leadership.
Yeah. Well, I just, my concern is basically that changeover, if there's some way to bridge that to whoever the new person is going to be, that this whole process doesn't stall or doesn't go sideways.
Well, hopefully they will transfer the knowledge to their successor, but the whole military, at least from what little I know or have experienced in the last 9 years, it seems like this is kind of a normal approach that they are usually rotated every 2 or 3 years.
That I'm familiar with. That's the reason why I asked that question. You know, we just want to make sure that, you know, there's a continuity there, it doesn't get, you know, 1 step forward, 2 steps back in the situation.
So the important thing is, I think there are 3 components to it. Number 1, the community stay informed on this issue, and I appreciate all the efforts of the community, of all the different groups in the community, including the Kanaka Maoli, the environmentalists like the Sierra Club. that they stay educated and knowledgeable about the situation, because we all live here in Hawaii. This is our home. The other is, the Board of Water Supply. Within the Board of Water Supply, let's make sure that we plan for that transition into the future to sustain this effort, which may not end in a few years. How do we sustain that? And also transfer of the knowledge from one group to the next group. Third area is that it's also with the Department of Health. They need to also plan for continuity and succession on this effort, because they're a key player in this, along with the EPA. But the EPA will suffer turnover. But hopefully, everybody at the Department of Health that are working on this issue, they live here on this island. And so they have a strong interest in protecting our water resources. So
I guess we'd have to keep you around for another 10 years to make sure it's done, right?
we need to plan for the future.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah. But I just want to thank Joyce for the report, giving her the opportunity to present. Thank you, Joyce.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm looking at this Waiawa Gulch training site. I just have a question on the report. So, I mean, clearly all these are exceeding the environmental levels, right? I mean, and if I look back at just the EPA, what they put out, right, like their hazard index gets blown up if there's a magnitude above the denominator. And that's what it seems like is happening in this site. My question is, because of the proximity of, I mean, it's clearly contaminated in this site. And, giving the picture of the down gradient of where the water wells come into play. And the detections, although it's below the limits, if the limit approaches, maybe not exceed, but starts to approach or eventually exceed because of potentially leaching of these chemicals into, say, the Manana well. For example, I mean, what is the Board of Waters plan, in anticipation for such leaching or movement of the contaminants in the event that there's not a proper cleanup on this particular site?
Yeah, and actually the use of AFFF or firefighting foam with PFAS in it has gone on for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I think only stopped sometime in the earlier part of the 2000s, 2008.
Yes.
So it's already in the environment.
Yeah.
They're not using the AFFF with our PFAS in it anymore, according to what they've told us. But what's in the environment is in the environment. Where it's migrating. So after learning about this, we shifted to weekly testing of the nearest well, BWS wells. And, we do have this initial lower detection at the Waipio Heights wells. There are also a lot of wells down gradient or further toward Pearl Harbor. Those are a lot of private wells that the National Guard's trying to get permission to access and test. One thing to point out on these test results, they're only initial test results of, I think, shallow groundwater. So not what we call the basal aquifer water. That's the aquifer that we're actually pumping our deep wells from. But this is shallower water that may be somewhat perched or held up in the alluvium. But we want them to extend their investigation now to go deeper and check what's happening in the basal aquifer and to go off property. So this investigation, this site inspection was focused only on National Guard property and didn't go off property. So some of the things we're looking at, we're continued testing and monitoring to see if there's a trend. If there's a trend and monitoring how the federal regulations go from draft to permanent regulations. Do we need treatment systems? And to begin that process to look at investigating treatment, potential treatment. Or if it looks like treatment may not be a viable option, do we want to actually bring water from another water source to this area if we can? This is going to be a very challenging time for us. I'd like to maybe ask Joyce if she wants to add anything, or our deputy manager, Erin Kawata, can add anything there.
Nothing much to add. I think Ernie had a pretty good overview of what our plans are, continuing just testing and monitoring our various wells.
So,
Yeah.
so we do have going back to the picture, so we do have we're monitoring the in between Waiawa and like the Mahana well and so forth.
Yeah, we are monitoring now. When we've learned of this situation from the
Yeah.
National Guard, which was only in early February,
Right.
we implemented, I asked our staff to look at the 6 closest wells to test on a weekly basis for PFAS.
Oh, okay.
It still takes 3 to 4 weeks for
Right.
test results to come back, but to increase the frequency of testing. So what there's a lot of pieces here. One of the pieces is, this is only one military site. And you saw the other table, maybe Joseph, we can bring that up. There are quite a number of military facilities in this Pearl Harbor, Central Oahu. It's really to find out from the Department of Defense, what are they finding in their investigations, and from there we can get a better handle on the challenges we may be facing for the Board of Water Supply. If we need to look at alternative wells, look at treatments, treatment systems to go in place, or ability to maybe move water around in our water system if we need to. This is
So this might be outside the scope of the Board of Water as in terms of discussion, but out of just curiosity, right? I mean, you're looking at magnitudes, orders of magnitudes above the exceedances for the PFAS chemicals, right? In just this particular slide. I'm assuming there might be other sites that have exceedances. I mean, maybe even Board of Water wells will have exceedances, but as far as these exceedances, now that the EPA has begun to regulate, is there remediation work that needs to be done on these sites?
I would hope that they do look at how do they clean this up. And what do they do to the impacted, what support the impacted wells, whether it be private wells or BWS wells.
Okay.
So board member Kaneshiro, we're gonna be retaining a consultant to actually help us understand the scope and magnitude of the problem here and look at different options, even treatment options. It is, you have to start planning for more challenges to come. EPA's regulations are not final yet. They're just, they let everybody know it's coming. And they're looking at probably targeting the end of this calendar year to have permanent drinking water regulations. Then once they adopt the drinking water regulations, they may have a transition period for utilities now to go out and design and construct treatment systems, alternative water sources or other options.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to have more information.
And I can tell that the board member Anthony has some questions.
Just a comment in the end. Just looking at this and following up on board member Kaneshio's comments, are you satisfied with just testing at the board's wells? Or do you foresee, like if you took this contaminated area as an example, or would you want to see actual monitoring wells around this area to get a better sense of what's coming before you see it at Manana Well or Pearl City?
That would be the idea. Yeah.
Is that something that
Yeah.
you're thinking you're going to request of DOD to implement?
So what we're going to be doing is I think we've already sent them some comments saying that they should be testing the basal aquifer, which is a deeper aquifer, not the shallow groundwater. But they would have to install monitor wells around this area to characterize the nature and extent of the PFAS contamination, how it's spreading, in what directions. Also, what's joining to this area is Waiava Stream, which leads down to Pearl Harbor ultimately, and along the. And we heard at the public meeting that we attended that the National Guard put on, Waiava Road area, there's a lot of private wells, there's a lot of agriculture going on there, aquaculture, kalo cultivation. And people are using their own private wells to drink that water. So it's the faster they can understand if the contamination has reached those areas, the better, I think.
Just offhand, do you know what MGD, Manana, and Pearl City Shaft are at? I'll bug you about it later, it's pretty specific.
I can get that information to you. I think.
To understand how big of a problem it is. Thanks.
And the one that, the biggest pumping well in that whole region, if you go back to that map, is the Navy's Waiava Shaft. That's pumping, because that's now the only water source for Joint Base Pearl Harbor. I mean, they're pumping, I think, around 15 million gallons a day.
Really?
Yeah. It's 14 to 15, I think. So this is, it's going to be very important for the National Guard to proceed quickly with further investigation here in this area. I'll just say that this is one military base location.
Right.
And that list, if you look at it, you got Schofield, we have the Army Airfield, you even have Fort Shafter and Crippler in the Honolulu area. So it's very important that we get a handle of whatever they're finding as quickly as possible.
And just to be clear, whenever you drop samples, it takes you 3 weeks to get the findings back.
For us, yeah, our lab's turnaround was at 3 to 4 weeks.
21 to 30 days.
In other words, goes to the mainland, is that what it is?
Yeah. Remember that this is being, these are tests down into the parts per trillion range, and we don't have the capability right now to do that. The Army Guard indicated their turnaround with the lab they're using through their consultant is 12 to 14 weeks.
Who has their hand up?
Kapuo, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation and to board member Benny and Kaneshiro for your folks' important questions. Couple of questions. I'm not sure who would be best positioned to answer them, whether that would be Ernie or Erwin, but I guess a couple of things. The first, given the complexity of the hydrogeology and the hydrology of this area and the way water moves, I mean, what we've seen from some of the modeling that's already been done is we've actually seen the contamination move up gradient of the wells, which is concerning as well. So my question is, if 14 to 15 MGD is being pulled from this one shaft, is that drawing the PFAS contamination closer to our wells? Is the first question. And the second question is a more general one about PFAS because I'm not as familiar with it. Does it sink? Does it float? I'm thinking about how it's moving within the aquifer, and I'm particularly concerned about leaching into the nearshore marine area and knowing some of the people who have lo'i, and that oftentimes where we're seeing groundwater seeping out are in these coastal seeps or springs, which are what people are actively cultivating or maybe relying on for food. So two kind of questions for anyone who can best answer them, please.
I guess on the first question, and Erwin, you can jump in at any time too, on the hydrogeology, we don't know exactly how the gradient would flow. The water would flow from Mauka to Makai. I think it's from Mauka to Makai because, like you say, Pearl Harbor, especially in the Waiava area, too, known for springs. for people growing watercress, kalo, aquaculture and other things. But the large draw of the Wyaba shaft, so that could actually, I don't know, could influence the direction of flow, that it may not be quite as intuitive as we think it is. So, but Wyaba is the biggest pumping well that we're aware of in this area. And our wells are a lot smaller, but yeah, it's too early to tell, Kapua. But Erwin, you want to add anything to that?
Sure, thank you, board member. Yes, PFAS is very water soluble. So it will go into water as a complete homogeneous solution. It won't go as something that sinks or floats or anything of that nature. So it will travel with water.
And it doesn't degrade very fast.
Yeah, it doesn't degrade very fast or very easily at all. Thank you.
Which is why they call it a forever chemical, I guess, right?
That's where the name comes from. Yes.
The other aspects is that PFAS has been used in household products and other applications for a long time.
Yeah, it's been in consumer products and various, firefighting foams, and actually was developed starting from the 50s. So it's been around in the environment and it's made its way into things like landfill, soil, surface water, many different places because it's been around for an extremely long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add on to Max's question about 5 minutes ago about how we deal with turnover with the military. I think one of the other answers to this is talking about asking the delegation to come up with a document codified at the federal level to be able to hold the Navy to what the set of instructions are long-term with remediation, long after defueling has taken place. That's one of the other pieces of the puzzle, is just so that everyone can understand what the rules are moving forward, as maybe some of the primary folks move on to whatever other jobs they're doing. I think it's important for us to think about that as well as a tool.
And the other aspects is that PFAS is used not only by the military, but the military is one of the big users of AFFF with PFAS. Is that, Red Hill is the first chapter, and then PFAS contamination is related to DoD facilities, maybe the second chapter here. So how do you create a governance model or oversight model that would continue to put eyes on this for our community, for the protection of our water resources, because we live on an island and we have nowhere else except the ocean to go for fresh water. So that's something, Lehu, for I think what you're alluding to is how to create some permanent governance on this issue.
Members, we have some testimony. We still have some testifiers, so I'll go ahead and take testimony. And if you guys have more questions, you can keep asking. All right, Ms. Wyatt, do we have in-person testimony on this item?
Yes, we do, Chair. I have one.
Okay, Chair recognizes Ms. Picola Davis.
Thanks, Ernie.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want that.
Okay. I've been coming for quite some time, so I'm trying to pare my testimony down. And there's no expectation from me for any kind of action for the board. Basically, it's me providing the board information that they may or may not have had. No, I'm not going to go over the 13 pages. I just pulled a few things out that I thought were important going back in history to understand how we got here and why we're here and how we can protect our aquifer if something like this happens again, where Ernie had taken the very quick action to close some to make sure the wells were closed so nothing could get filtered into them. But under November 29th, the first bullet, please line that out. I don't know where that idea came from in my head. Maybe somebody whispered it to me and I don't know. So the leak occurred on the 20th. And from all the reports that I've seen, there isn't really anything solid telling us what happened between the 20th and the 28th, except for a handout that I'm going to give you after this. So you're not flipping through it. Command investigation. Okay. And that was the first investigation done by Kavanaugh. There's been other investigations done by the EPA and various others. Okay. But some of the things I'm taking you through is that on November 29th, so this is about 8-9 days afterwards, the Navy Public Works, because I'm not saying JPHHH, Navy Public Works began a drinking water system flush in the Eastern housing, and it was via 12 fire hydrants. Now, if you know what happened when they started doing the controlled flushing, there were many other areas, and there weren't only 12 fire hydrants. Really? So there's a lot of confusing things going on in the dialogue between the Navy, the media, Department of Health. And as you go through here, you'll see on the 29th at about 7 p.m., our Department of Health issued the press release making sure or recommending that all Navy water system users stop using it. Then at 8:26, the Navy decided to basically say, out of abundance of caution, let's avoid drinking it, but samples have not been detected of petroleum in the initial testing. So I don't know what kind of testing they were doing, but it was obviously really quick, not these 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And they were saying they weren't finding it. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the no detection because of the environmental action levels being so high? There still remained, now I'm at 2:14 p.m. under November 30th, where they had talked about they flushed the housing area twice, 3 times. It was ongoing, and residents were being asked to run their water, to flush their own lines, and they were notified that there's no petroleum or contaminants that had been detected. However, there remained a concern that residual contamination may exist in some of the water lines. I found that not matching. One was saying one thing. So in early December, which can only be December 1st or 2nd, Navy negotiated with Department of Health to allow the flushing of hydrants. So they're already doing it. Now they're asking for permission. If the hydrants were monitored during the flush, sampled for TPH, and water ran on land, not in streets. Of course, December 3rd, Navy was told to cease and desist because they weren't following the rules, which was not to let the water run on the streets. And it's a continuous story about not following the rules. Well, we can go back to when they first found out where was this leak coming from, and an engineer on the 3rd or 4th of December discovered the Hume drain. And lastly, one of the points I want to make is it says, although not designed to be a dedicated fuel transportation system, which I would never put this in a document, the AFF retention line was also designed to be an emergent fuel transmission line in the event of a catastrophic leak. So why does this matter? Some of the things that matter in this document stem from the discussion today about turnover of Navy admirals. We can't do anything. We can't do anything about that. This also shows what the immediate response looked at by the Navy and how they tried to control the narrative. I always thought that if you smelled gas in your house and you have a gas stove, let's find out if there's a leak. It's kind of like, for me, it's like obvious. Okay, let's check and see if there's a leak first. But instead, there was denial. They never let the consumers know why they are flushing. And I look back at some of the flushing events from the Board of Water Supply, and the customers are always informed about the flushing, it's going to occur, where it's occurring, how long it might take. Stay tuned, but they're given a lot of information so that they're not wondering along the line, okay? So this handout that I'm going to pass out is the very first command inspection done on the 14th of January. You want to know how long it takes to get it to become public? This got published publicly on the 13th of June, 22. So that's what, 7, 8, 9 months? So you can pass these things out. I only made 5 because don't want to use all my ink.
Thank you.
Okay, but the last 5 pages from this particular report takes you from November 20th to December 7th, step by step what was happening. You'll be interested to read it. Sorry, it's so small, but that's the way they print things. I said it was about flushing today, and that's because the first type of flushing they did was conventional flushing that didn't do anything but just recycle the water around and around because they never thought that they had any fuel in it. The unidirectional flushing, what was advised by the doctor from Purdue, Dr. Welton, and was never done. And inside the 13 pages, you'll see that the Navy had a bunch of reasons why they couldn't. And number 1 was they wanted to get fresh water as fast as possible. And if you think about how long it took, they never did get it as fast as possible, because people ended up having to go to Waikiki. I think they were in hotels for 3 months. The lesson learned is if you do it right the first time, you don't really have to keep on trying to fix it. It'll be done. And that's not what I've seen in the case of all of this. So yes, I gave you a bunch of reading material, but that's my style. Hopefully I got done in 2 minutes.
Not quite, but it's okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola Davis. Do we have other in-person testimony and testifying in person? Okay, thank you. Mr. Maria, do we have any remote testimony on this item?
Yes, Chair, we have 2 testifiers waiting to provide testimony. Chair, Meredith Wilson and Jamie Simic have been admitted into the session. Testifiers, please turn on your cameras and remain on mute until we call your name. We'll call on you one at a time to provide your testimony. After the chair recognizes you, please unmute your microphone and state and spell your first and last name for the record. You will then have 2 minutes to provide your testimony. You will be given a 1-minute reminder to wrap up your comments. Meredith,
All right,
Ms. Wilson, please unmute your microphone and wait for the board chair.
all right, Chair recognizes Ms. Meredith Wilson. Ms. Wilson, welcome. You may start with the reminder that please conclude within 2 minutes.
Sure. Aloha. Again, my name is Meredith Wilson, and I was a resident of Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam Military Housing for 5 years. No matter how many thousands of miles away I am, I continue to deal with a persisting physical and emotional fallout from what happened to us in 2021. You all are such a scrappy and creative bunch for how you've handled this by seeking out every grant and fund imaginable to combat passing the buck to your customers to cover what I'm sure is an insane amount of testing and monitoring, all due to an irresponsible neighbor. I understand that the Hawaii Department of Health is your regulator, but they're also your partner in serving the public. I have several questions regarding the recent coverage of the antifreeze additive to the jet fuel being posed as the most significant health risk to our exposure and possibly to everyone there on the island eventually. I don't know. We just don't know what we don't know. Firstly, Department of Health stated that the Navy alerted them about the additive, quote unquote, soon after the spill. When was BWS notified that that additive was there? Secondly, I have printed there the name of 2,2-methioxyethanol, also known as antifreeze, is listed on the 2016 AOC required contaminants of potential concern list. But interestingly enough, it's in the section that the Navy requested to be removed from having to test for. Does BWS test for this or any other version of antifreeze in their wells? Next, the February 2nd, 2023, Dr. Brewer memo written to state toxicologist Diana Felton and chief of the Safe Drinking Water Branch, Dennis Lopez, is difficult to find on the DOH website. Nowhere near the homepage, not on the Red Hill main page. It's within a tiny section entitled Aquifer Monitoring and Recovery. Do you think that something we now know posed the most significant health risk should have taken a month to report in the news on March 20th of this year, especially if the sample was known about as far back as December 21st, 2021, when it first happened? Why haven't the recipients of this memo responded directly instead of through a spokesperson? Next, this may be specifically for Mr. Erwin Kawada. Based off of the new information from the Newfields Lab breakdown of JP5, we now know that there is a decrease in xylenes and methylnaphthalenes, as well as an increase in C8 to C18 aliphatics from Dr. Brewer's February 2022 memo. He notes that this would lead to the overall toxicity of degraded fuel and tap water to be higher for TPH. For example, the EAL should be lower based off of the actual composition of what we were exposed to in that fuel. Do you think that with this new data, when can we expect a newly developed TPH EAL from Department of Health? Can you please help us with that? What do you think it should be? Again, the February 2nd memo says it will be updated based on further testing, but what are we waiting for? Lastly, I know you have a lot on your plate. Red Hill, water conservation, PFAS, regular main breaks, the average customer upset with their bill. There's so much. But you're not alone. We're all here with you. Ola Ikawai. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. We definitely stand together as one and one community. We will note the questions that you have had in your testimony, and we can provide
Chair,
responses.
we have some initial responses, if you would like us to share the responses. Or we can respond by letter to her.
We'll definitely respond by letter, but if you have any initial ones at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my deputy manager, Mr. Erwin Collector, to come up, and he's Meredith, we got your questions this morning, and we've been working on the responses to the best we can in the short time.
Thank you, guys. Sorry I was tardy to send them in. I always feel like something new is going to break every moment.
Yeah, we're with you on that. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair, members. Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming and your testimony and certainly your questions. I want to tell you, your questions are absolutely technically spot on. They actually talk about what we wrote to the Department of Health dating back to 2016, actually. So with respect to the information about the additive, we were not informed of it. We learned about it through the media and through other means, but not directly from the Department of Health or the Navy. With respect to the analysis of 2-methoxyoxyethanol, that's certainly something that we're currently not testing, but we're taking a look at methods and certainly detection limits or reporting limits to try to get the lowest ones that we can with respect to that. With respect to the Dr. Brewer's February 2nd memo, and in terms of what that means in terms of the EALs, we actually wrote to the Department of Health and argued with them back in 2016 that they should retain their low 160 160 part per billion environmental action limit. And they actually had a taste and odor threshold of 100. And we recommended to them at that time, several times in several letters, that they should maintain that 100 part per billion threshold as the actual, limit, and try to get down lower if at all possible, because fuel is a mixture. So as you pointed out in, what he actually wrote in that February 2nd, 2023 memorandum, because it goes to other forms of aliphatics, again, it's a total mixture. And because of that, you should try to have an environmental action level as low as absolutely possible. Because we told them back in 2016, if you can smell it, it's going to be there. And so if that was the threshold of the taste and odor, then from a health standpoint, be at that level, if not lower. And basically that was it. Sir, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms.
Thank you.
Wilson, we'll get back to you with more complete answers when we're able to.
All right, thank you, guys.
If we are able to, some of those we know the answer. All right, Mr. Maria, next testifier, please.
Chair, Jamie Simic has been admitted into the session. Ms. Simic, please unmute your microphone and wait for the board chair.
Aloha, Ms. Simic. Thank you very much for testifying. You may begin your testimony. Please be reminded of the 2-minute time limit.
Go ahead, Jamie. You might be on mute, Jamie. No audio.
Okay, Ms. Simic, please keep trying. We'll come back to you. Hopefully we can figure it out. We will have someone on our team try to help you get connected or get your audio through. In the meantime, I'd like to move on. But please keep trying. Don't hang up. Madam Secretary, do we have any written testimony on this item? Thank you. All right, board members, I'd like to offer one more opportunity. You can, if you have any questions, any more questions or questions from any of the testifiers, you may ask those now.
Ernie, that antifreeze question came up here, right, when the EPA was here?
Yeah, actually, I was looking back at our minutes of January.
Yeah.
The discussion on additives came up. And I think Roger at the time mentioned, Roger Brewer,
Yeah.
that he had gotten a sample of JP5 and he was going to have it tested to find out what's in it. Right? Because I think some of the additives were restricted information.
Right.
So he was going to actually do a test of his own and have some results back, I think by around April
Right.
this year.
Because to Ms. Wilson's point, we probably haven't been testing for antifreeze in our water because we didn't expect it to be present in the first place. And I think that goes just to the input question that we've keep having to come back to about, some transparency as to what went in so we can know what we need to be looking for.
Meredith, so one of her questions mentions about something called COPC, contaminants of potential concern. And initially, when this Red Hill situation began, 9 years ago that we became involved, the Navy was testing for, was it 60 something different, 68 or 66 different chemicals? And at some point in time, they requested the Department of Health and the EPA to reduce it to around 10 or 12. And the EPA and DOH approved it. But we advocated that they continue to test for the 60 plus different chemicals, which maybe included one of these things.
If we asked about that.
Yeah.
the object reduction back at 2016.
Was it a cost issue or a time issue or why they wanted to reduce down?
It's probably national security. They don't
Well,
want anybody to know what's in the field.
I just, my memory is not the best, but I think some of the argument was, well, they weren't finding anything.
Right.
So they said, well, why should we continue testing for these things? But for us, we felt that having a consistent historical record on test data that is consistent over the whole years and years lets you know when the trend is for increasing levels of certain things that maybe you weren't picking up 9 years ago, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago started to show up.
Right.
Can I add something, please? I'm sorry. The Navy did say it was a trade secret, but a couple of months ago, I went into the military standards, which is public availability, to look at what was in JP5 and then connect the ingredients in that to another military standard. And that's how we found out that JP5 does have ingredients that we are allowed to see and that the antifreeze was there. So it just took a while to pull the information out, but it's there. Anybody can get to it. And now I'm going to stop. And I'm sorry, Brian.
Thank you, Sue.
I think good information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Members, any further discussion? The next item for information is Chair recognizes Mr. Joe Cooper with item number 2, results of the sale of our water system revenue bond series 2023.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. I'm here to give you the report on our bond sale. Pursuant to Resolution 692, 2023, the board issued $17,425,000 principal amount of revenue bonds on March 23rd of this year. We also received a premium of $1,916,609 on that issue. These bonds were issued to pay the cost of improvements in our bonds and to pay the cost of issuance. This is a tax-exempt new money issue, and it was structured to wrap around the board's existing debt service. So that allows us to actually defer principal payments for the first 10 years to help with cash flow. We met with S&P in Honolulu, a rating agency, and we met with Fitch, another rating agency, over video conference. S&P reaffirmed our AAA bond rating, and Fitch upgraded our AA+ bond rating to a AAA bond rating. We marketed this bond issue by issuing a voluntary notice on the website EMMA. We also had a pre-recorded investor presentation of our POS, or preliminary official statement. And we also made in-person presentations to Bank of Hawaii and First Hawaiian. Bank of Hawaii and First Hawaiian purchased, 13 million of the bond, and First Hawaiian purchased almost $3 million of the bond. So they were our principal investors purchasing for their clients. On the market, although the market was volatile, we received 12 investor orders representing 80% of the transaction from retail investors. So those are individuals buying for personal accounts as opposed to insurance or pension funds. The overall transaction received $54 million in orders, which made it over 3 times oversubscribed. Another indication of the attractiveness of our bonds. And that allowed us to actually decrease the yield and increase the price a little bit. We had an all in true interest cost of just over 4%, and the average life is just under 22 years. We did, our bankers did give us some comparisons to some other transactions that occurred the same day. One was a GO bond issued by the New York City Water Department, who was AAA rated, and we were about 14 basis points less than they were. So that's very speaks well of us. And also Baltimore County, which was a AAA rating, and actually Baltimore is one of the standards that that all bonds are issued or rated against. So the fact that we beat those two agencies is another sterling star for the Board of Water Supply. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. Members, any questions?
Just thanks, Joe, for keeping the rating as polished as it is. We appreciate it.
It's all a group effort. It's a reflection of the board's management and the Board of Water Supply as a whole.
Mr. Cooper, just a second. I think we might have covered this last meeting, but just in case we didn't, are we the only public agency in the state to have AAA ratings by both rating agencies?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're the only AAA by any rating agency, but having the double, or as they call it, the 6 A's instead of 3 A's is a real testament to our strength.
That's great. And then you mentioned that we were 3 times oversubscribed this issue.
Yes.
Can you compare that with our previous issues?
Off the top of my head, I think our last issue last year, we were 2.7 times oversubscribed. And our previous issue 2 years ago, I think we were 6 times oversubscribed.
Okay.
Those were somewhat larger issues. And so larger issues draw more attention. Obviously, we only issued $19 million, well, $17 million principal, $19 million with premium. So a lot of large insurance companies, et cetera, don't even bother to look at us because their investments would be much larger than that.
Okay, and that's despite the instability in the rate market.
Yes, despite the instability in the rate market.
All right, very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Good
Thank you,
job.
Joe.
and,
Thank you.
Thank you, board members, for also laying the groundwork for this effort. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item here is item number 3, status update of groundwater levels at all index stations for December and January. December 2022 and January 2023. Chair recognizes Mr. Barry Usagawa, Program Administrator, Water Resources Division.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Can you hear me okay? I'm on Zoom today. And apologize, I have a ongoing chest cold, so I thought not to spread it in the boardroom today. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. So we have 5 aquifer stations in low groundwater as of February. Kamuki, Pearl City, Kaluanui, Wailua, and are in caution, and Punaloo's in alert. Our production levels are quite low though, 121.49. No, 122 million gallons per day. That's because the rainfall was, had some good rains in February, 170% of normal. And the 5-month moving average is close to normal, so that 94%. And National Weather Service is still forecasting above normal precipitation through April. So a couple more months of this above normal rainfall would be good for our water levels. And however, they are looking at I guess during the summer months are coming up. ENSO neutral is I think forecasted, but we'll continue to monitor all indicators monthly, but I think it's looking great so far. So with that, I guess since you have the pumpage up, I think there's a previous question on how much Monano well pumps and as well as Pearl City shaft. So Monano was 0.3, Pearl City shaft was you went right by it. about 0.8 MGD. So I think as a manager said, they're pretty small sources. Primarily providing water, Pro City Chef provides water for the Honolulu area.
Down.
Manana provides water to Honolulu. Anyway, I think that's my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Barry, I have a quick
Member.
question. It's Kapua. Sorry.
Yeah.
122 is super low. That's maybe one of the lowest I can remember. I'm just curious what our lowest monthly pumpage has been, if you know offhand, or how this compares, because it seems really, really low.
Yeah, I never seen it go below 120, Kapua. So yeah, 122 is as low as I've seen it as well. In recent memory, yeah. And that's, since the in 1970, we were pumping out 112 million. So it peaked in 1990 when we got to 157. But since 1990, I haven't seen monthly pumpages, much lower than this. I have not seen anything below 120. So it's
So Kapua, it's on the graph right now. You can see the square blocks in gray is the 5-year monthly average. So yeah, you're right. And we're starting the year off really low. That's a positive from the resource.
It's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Joe would say, well, revenue is down. But that's okay, saving water is important, but it's the rain and also, the conservation efforts of Barry and his team, and also our communications office too.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, any further questions? Okay, if not, let's see. Do we have Miss Simic available?
Thank you for your patience. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Yay. First, I want to thank everybody for all their hard work, and especially for the Dr. Brewer's letter. The last time I gave you guys an update, my children.
You have to keep this in the picture frame?
No, ma'am.
So I can throw this away?
Yes, ma'am. Arts and crafts. I updated you on my children to some extent and ourselves medically. What everybody didn't know at that time is I had done a GPL tox screen, and hearing what is coming back in YABA or YPO and other areas that I have alerted to since the beginning, and then seeing this GPL tox screen that has just come in 10 months, that was taken 10 months after we left the island. And my kids primarily lived on the island, and they were born in Manana housing and at Tripler. I just wanted to give a brief update on what those forever chemicals do and why this is so important. 177 appointments in the past 3 months for my children and I. Everything from pediatric CTs because of the nosebleeds, down to pediatric endoscopies, down to ultrasounds for the kidneys, pelvic ultrasounds. I have surgery scheduled to remove reproductive organs. My daughter, it's confirmed that her eyesight is regressing, as is mine. My son and I are waiting to see a specialist. 12 referrals, 22 new medications, 8 urinalysis in office, and all of them confirm blood still in our urine, either at trace or moderate amounts, but we can't get urology consults, except for my daughter, who is being seen in a pediatric, I won't even say the word, mammogram, breast ultrasound, confirming issues with the lymph nodes, emergent CT, new masses on my ovaries, I don't like listing my personal symptoms. As I've said from the beginning, I'm very shy, not tech savvy. Social media is not my domain, and being in the public eye is not my domain. My domain is helping others and being behind the scenes. Ernie, I can't thank you enough for sounding the alarms as long as you have, because you woke me up in 2014 to what was going on with my body. I just was not confident enough to stand strong when they told me it was mold I was smelling in my home in Manana. I strongly encourage for you guys to continue to keep digging, because this has not only just affected my family physically, there's other things that it's affected that I can't speak on, but also my dog. And I'm not the only one. This is a consensus across the board. So I continue to plead with you guys to hold those accountable. For those that worked on the Roger Brewer letter, I have to thank you. I was the very first person to submit that letter into record, and it started opening up medical doors for me and my children that were pretty hard closed, even though you can apparently tell that we are very sick. We just don't show it. We enjoy every day. I fight for the island. I fight for everybody before us and everybody that's coming after us. And this is a team effort. I just pray to stop any more damage from future generations, because you only get one aquifer and you only get one shot. So I just wanted to give you guys an update and let you know that let you know that your fighting has opened doors, at least for my family, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. That's all.
Thank you, Jamie. Jamie,
And lower those EAL levels.
yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Our prayers are for you and your family.
My
You get
prayers are
better.
for Oahu and you guys.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simic, for
Thank you.
your very heartfelt testimony. All right, we've got one more item on the agenda today. And if you guys can, if those who are present can remain until the very end, I'd really appreciate it, until the end of the regular session. This final item here is the water main repair report for February 2023. We have Mr. Jason Nikaido, Program Administrator, Field Operations Division.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Board members. This is the water main repair report for February. February, we had 30 main breaks, which is consistent with previous months or previous years. And that brings us a fiscal year to date total of 245 main breaks, which is on par for previous years. This is a list of the 30 main breaks. Most were small diameter. We did have one 16-inch that in Nimitz Highway that was contractor damage. This is our leak detection report for February. Our leak detection team investigated 28 points of interest and found 15 leaks. Of those 15 leaks, 8 were meter couplings, 4 were on the customer side, and 3 were service laterals. To date, the leak detection team has found 274 leaks. Okay, that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Members, any questions? If not, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
Jason. That brings us to the end of our regular agenda, except we have one more item I'd like to bring up that's not on the agenda. So for the last year or so, we've had the pleasure of working with our colleague here, Ms. Donna Sevchek, and right when we get used to pronouncing your name, you let us know that this is your last meeting.
Yeah, but I can make the link so that the dates were all shifted.
So we just wanted to recognize you, Don, for, and, thank you for all your contributions and, being part of our team and Ohana here, and you'll always be part of us. So wanted to wish you well.
No, thank you. It's been my honor. And truly, it's a very monumental time for me to participate. So I really take that responsibility to heart. But thank you for welcoming me and supporting me.
So where are you going?
To the private sector.
Oh.
Sorry, next. It's all disappointed.
First guess.
Thanks.
We're gonna miss you.
Yeah,
so
I'll
much.
be in town, so I'm not far. So I'll be actually closer now instead of a couple of days.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Call us anytime.
Sure.
Yeah.
Goodbye, yeah.
You want to attend any of their meetings?
Might crash your next
So,
meeting, yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
Yeah. You're doing great things, so thanks.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
We're really happy for you and we'll miss you. See you around.
I have your numbers.
And on behalf of all the
Thanks,
board
guys.
here and the department, Ernie,
Yeah.
that's for the game.
Yeah, thanks, Ernie. I'll listen back.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All right, so as I said, that brings us to our end of our regular agenda. We do have executive sessions. So let's stand in recess to. Thank you, everybody.
We need a.
You need a motion to.
So moved, sorry.
Second.
Go ahead. They moved and seconded,
And Don.
Yeah.
to go into executive session. Any discussion? If not, all those, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes. We're gonna go into executive session. Let's stand in recess. We are now in regular session. We've got the recording on and we do have everyone back, including Vice Chair Sproat, who's joining us remotely. I think we are, if there's no further business for this, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Sevcek, seconded by Member Anthony to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good.
All those opposed say nay. All right. Please stand adjourned.